balanced and worked with all of the department heads throughout to get their recommendations and tried to manage ways to put their requests into the budget and still make it a balanced budget and see where we landed at the end. And so I put together this presentation. In the packet I sent to you quite a few different helps so that you didn't have to just read through the whole budget and try to understand what that was. One of them, just a brief overview department-wise, was this big sheet here. This will show you the broken down into different funds. Fund 10 is our general fund, within the general fund there are many different departments. So that's where you'll find like city administration or the treasurer's department or the planning and zoning or building inspector, kind of all the different day-to-day operations of the city. That's in our general fund. So that's Fund 10, and it's typically funded by taxes. And you can see the revenues in Fund 10 up at the top in the green. We got sales tax and property tax are the biggest contributors to this fund. And then the next funds 21 through 42, those are what we call special revenue funds. And the revenue that comes into those are a lot of times ones with impact fee or transfers from the general fund. So like your capital projects fund, Fund 40, it doesn't really have a revenue generator. If it's holding some money in its fund, it'll gain a little bit in interest, but it doesn't have an impact fee. And so the only way that we can fund these capital projects is by transferring money from the general fund down to that Fund 40 or 41. But if you look at like fund in the 20s, the food pantry, recreation, parks, fire, they all generate their own revenue through user fees or through donations. And then typically the user fees or the donations pay for a majority of those funds. And if we have to cover a shortfall, then we'll transfer some money from the general fund down and cover that shortfall. But we've separated those out into a special revenue fund so we can kind of track and make sure that the revenues cover the expenses in those funds. And then if you go in the 50s, those are what we call enterprise funds. Those are funds, business-like accounts, and those are funded by utility fees typically. So we have on everybody's water bill, they have a water fee, they have a treatment plant fee, they have a storm drain fee, and they have a garbage fee. And this year we added that garbage fund, Fund 57, or solid waste fund, Fund 57. And then also on the sheet we have our RDAs, which are redevelopment areas that have been created, and they have special funding through property tax. So the RDA downtown is our only active RDA right now, and we've talked a lot about that, and we'll discuss it a little bit through this presentation. So that was one of the budget helps. The other one was the budget memo. And if you have a question about any of the expenses that I have here today on this presentation, the budget memo is a good place to go to find out about that expense and why we're doing it. So I won't get into the detail of what's in the budget memo today, but that is a good resource for you. And not only today, but throughout the year, if you remember, you'll want to remember what did we fund, and we try to put all of the significant items into this budget memo that aren't just your common everyday maintenance and operation items. So anyways, we'll get into the budget now. It's broken up into, let's see, maybe. Oh, there we go. So first, there's a couple of dates. Today's May 7th. By law, we're supposed to adopt a tentative budget on the first meeting in May. And then we're supposed to adopt a final budget on the final meeting in June. So between now and June, we'll talk about what has been appropriated into the tentative budget and if we need to make some adjustments. we can do that by June 18th. And the fine print is basically saying city staff did the best we could. Budgets are always kind of a guess of what we think will happen. It's our best estimates of what we think will happen. But there's certain circumstances that happen every year that make it so that the budget wasn't an exact science. So, okay, so first we'll talk about revenues. Like I said before, one of our biggest revenues is our sales tax. It's about it's not quite half of our total taxes that we have coming into the general fund, and we have had a really good trajectory for sales tax over the years. And the mayor's put together a nice model that bases it off our population size. And kind of, it gives us a really good estimate on what we think sales tax is going to be. And so this year's sales tax, we're estimating at $3 million. Last year, I think we were estimating at 2.88. Yeah, let's see. Is that what it was? Yeah, 2.883. So, we're estimating another $120,000 coming in from our sales tax. With that sales tax money, we talk about this quite a bit. So 80% of $3 million is $2.4 million. And like I said before, if we don't transfer money to capital projects, then we will have no money to pay for those capital projects. So typically what we try to do is transfer about 80% of our tax revenue, our sales tax revenue, to debt services and capital projects. This year, we're making transfers of 2.693, which is over 80%. But we'll talk about some new revenue that we received this year and that we will receive ongoing, and that is to help us pay for our roads. So you'll notice that the roads budget, that's the second one in, the Transportation Capacity Fund. We're transferring money from the general fund, extra money from the general fund into the roads so that we can pay for future roads as well. Let's see. Curtis, can you explain kind of what the state gives us in road money and then how we need to show that we're paying for roads to the state?
Yeah, you bet. So primarily, in the past, the state has provided what we call Class C road money. Some people call it B and C road money. For cities, it's Class C money, and it's derived mostly off of the gas tax. Goes in and there's an allocation formula based off of the number of miles that the city's responsible for maintaining, and that money has to be used for the operation, maintenance, and/or construction repair of roads. So anything that's going on in the roads department basically qualifies for that. It can extend out to sidewalks, curbs, gutters, anything that's involved in the road system. So that's been the primary pot of money. Just in the last year, so not this last legislative session, but the one before that, the state created a new funding source for rural areas, and the short acronym for it is RTIF. It's Rural Transportation Infrastructure Fund. And so I'm not going to try and say that. I will tongue twist myself. So RTIF is that money. Class C money is distributed 6 times throughout the year, so about every other month we get a funding allocation off of this. The RTIF fund's a little bit different. They collect that for an entire year, and then they distribute out those collections mostly in the same manner as the calculation as what the Class C money is. It follows a similar type of format. But this is a brand new funding source, and it's only for rural areas. So as long as your population meets their definition, the state's definition of rural, which we will for the foreseeable future, this money will be an annual appropriation, comes in about January or so. It'll become available to us every single year in one lump sum. And I think we have the amount in a later slide, but
Yeah.
it was just-
488.
yeah, it was just shy of $500,000 this year. So this is significant because we've been receiving just right around 500,000 for Class C money. So this basically doubles the amount that we're given. Now, the RTIF money carries the same restrictions as the Class C money. So it can't be used for general operations, but it can go in and fund operation, maintenance, repairs, and construction of roads. So basically, just about anything the street department does or that transportation capacity fund would do is what that money has to be dedicated and purposed for.
So, over the past years, we've got about 500,000 in Class C funds. And just to pay for the streets, if you look on the Excel spreadsheet, under the general fund, about not quite halfway down, there's the streets line. You'll notice that in 2025, we're budgeting 820,000. So Class C road funds, didn't even pay for just that portion of our streets department, which is our operating and maintenance of our streets. So let alone could we transfer money from the general fund to our future road projects. But with this RTIF money, that has really helped us this budget year to be able to pay for that all the streets department operating and maintenance, and also allows us to transfer some money over to future roads so that we're doing what the state wants us to do and paying for future roads, but also so before we were kind of supplementing just the streets department with our general fund monies. Now we can use that money for some of these expenses that I'll explain to you later down the slides. So it was a big help in this year's budget.
So when does the RTIF money come in? One time a year? When does it come in?
About January.
January? Okay.
Okay, actually, I guess the biggest source of our revenue is property tax. And this is kind of a graph showing how our property tax has increased over the last few years. You'll notice that the big jump last year was the property tax that you all are aware of. The one just before that was the property tax when the fire department went full-time. And then the two big jumps before that were when RDAs dropped off and when we started capturing the RDA money. So this year, we are not proposing a property tax increase, and we're estimating that about $80,000 worth of new growth will come in from property taxes. But that doesn't increase the certified tax rate. The certified tax rate takes into account the $80,000 worth of new growth. We're estimating that because we don't know that number until a couple weeks into June. Yeah.
So, Curtis, could you kind of talk a little bit about the new growth and how it's important to use that new growth funding for expand or for growth?
I think you had a question from a council member. Not to,
Spoke just before you did, Mayor.
Oh,
Jeff has a question.
sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. So just a question, when I looked at the chart in the handout, this one's a little amended because you've added the last little wing on the right-hand side there.
Right.
From what was online, but the property tax increase, if I remember correctly, was like August of last year in 2023. So
Yeah.
that's FY '24. When did we receive that money, and is this chart showing calendar year or fiscal year? Because I see the big jump in '23.
Yeah, so the property tax takes into account the year that you amend it. So it was for calendar year '23. Your bills come due in November, and you pay that new property tax the end of the year. So after the council adopted the property tax increase, then everybody got their bills. So we saw most of that money come in November, December, and it's trickling in still with people who are delinquent.
We saw it come in fiscal year '24, but calendar year '23.
Right, yeah.
So this
This
really
chart
calendar year?
it's calendar year because the property taxes are based off of a calendar year. So that's kind of that's the only way to really track those.
Okay, thank you.
And then that new little tail that we added is just what we're estimating in new growth this year.
Thank you.
It really is property taxes with the calendar is really confusing. And so you almost have to decide, are you gonna use the county's calendar system, which is totally based off of the calendar year, or try and use the city's fiscal year, and it becomes confusing as you try and match that. I really have a lot of sympathy, having audited several property tax systems in the past. It's a challenge.
You're good.
As far as the new growth, Mayor, I appreciate the question. To clarify, the certified tax rate is designed to where if you had no growth that happened in the city, your revenues from property taxes would stay exactly flat. Which means if somebody's house went up in value, the rate has to adjust down. And so if somebody else's house stayed flat, their taxes would actually go down because the rate would go down, but their value would stay the same or go down. But another person would go up, actually see it, because even though the rate went down, their house would probably go up more in value than what the certified tax rate would allow. So individual bills can vary, but the certified tax rate is designed to keep the revenues exactly flat. Now, you're allowed to capture new growth, and that's completely exempted from the formula. So if a person builds a new home next to you, and that's the only thing that happens, the tax value on that new home would be new revenue to the city. And the city would capture 100% of the tax bill, of the city's portion of the tax bill. And you're able to capture 100% of that for that year. So it's a one-time bump, which will then adjust the certified rate for the next year, because now it adjusts the values up, but the certified rate says you can collect what you collected last year plus your new growth, so it all kind of balances out overall. So that 80,000 that we're projecting is designed to pay for extra services that come from adding another house or two, or a subdivision, or a mall, or a park, whatever business. The challenge is it's not designed to capture inflation. So I don't want to confuse that growth is inflationary. It's not. It's designed to pay for, at some point, we may need public safety people of whatever type, firemen, policemen, planning and zoning, it's designed to pay for public works, growth, because you may have more roads to maintain now, water, don't capture water lines separate. But also for additional people coming in the city office building, and you may need additional help with office staff. So that 80,000 is designed to help cover some of those extra positions or extra expenses. There could be extra expenses that are just incurred as well. So it gets really, it's precarious in using growth for just inflationary costs.
Question along with that then. So a new home gets constructed, townhouse, single-family home, whatever. When does the taxing start on that? When the construction's done, when it's sold? How does that work?
A lot of it depends on the county and when they pick up on it. So typically a county will get notified of a building permit, and their assessor's office will come out and make an assessment. However, so the reason why we're so late is assessments have to be done and tallied into the system by, the date is something like May 20th or something like that. So, but they got to look at what the property was worth as of January 1st. So let me give you an example. January 1st, a property owner files a building permit, but the property is completely, no activity is happening on it. And an assessor comes through, sees the building permit, says, what was the property looking like in January, February? Nothing. So you get nothing. So even though you've got a building permit, there's no taxable value, which means there's no growth. Next year comes along, and all of a sudden a home sprouted up. Hopefully it's done within 12 months, depending on the size, I guess. And the assessor comes out and says, oh, there's a home on here. And at that point, it comes in as new growth. So even though the building permit was in the previous year, the new growth comes when the home actually exists. The challenge comes when a home starts in like October, but doesn't finish up until like April or May or June. They assess the value as of January. So you get a portion of that. And so let's say it turns out to be, I'm just going to use a number, a $500,000 home. Let's say by January 1st, it's $200,000 done. They'll assess the value at $200,000 for that year, so you get a part of the growth. Then the next year they come out and say, "Oh, the home's done. That's now worth $500,000." You get the other $300,000 times the tax rate of growth. So it can be a staggered position, and the bigger the project, obviously, the more staggered the growth is on it. So a large apartment complex that maybe takes 2 years to build could be staggered in over 3 years for the city, and on the timing, if that helps.
It does, but if a contractor builds a home and it's not been bought yet, is it still assessed a tax then to
It
the
is,
contractor?
because they're responsible for the increase in value of that home.
Thank you.
That's why they don't like holding spec homes. Yeah, it is. What I have to, no, it gets the residential exemption, so it's subject to the same tax as what a homeowner is.
Okay. This is just one more time that RTIF money that Curtis had talked about. And I just wanted to highlight that because it was a big help in our budget this year. So we will now ongoing receive extra funds to help pay for our B&C road funds and future roads. But really what that did was help, so we're not subsidizing so much money to our roads.
Will it adjust with inflation?
In theory, yes. So it's,
Because then the gas goes up, right?
yeah,
If gas goes up, but gas tax is,
Yeah.
gas tax is, it doesn't go up with if gas is $1 or if gas is $2, don't you get the same per gallon? I think it's gas tax
Do
per
until
gallon.
they change that portion, until the state changes it. And then each year, we submit a road mileage verification. So as new subdivisions come in, those roads go into our system and we get extra money because we have more road miles, lane miles of roads, so.
Yeah.
Our engineer does that annually.
So did I hear you correctly that this helps take care of your day-to-day expenses on the roads as well?
Yeah, because it goes into our street funds, but it also helps maintain the street, and the excess money can help. Well, we can build roads with it, we can buy equipment with it. Anything road related, we can use that for. And in the past, the B&C road money didn't cover.
Yeah, we've never had
tax
trouble.
dollars.
Yeah, we've never had trouble filling the state's requirements because it costs so much to maintain roads.
Yeah.
So we've been using tax dollars to supplement.
So we
that.
always had more or less a credit on our accounts as the B&C, so we could justify utilizing, we always utilized all their money.
Salaries?
Salaries
Okay, so
so now it
street
looks,
expenses.
from what the expenses look like and what we're catching here in Class C road funds, it'll cover all the street department and have reserves to put back into capital projects for the roads.
I don't want to be clear, when I say salaries, it's the salaries that are going into the street department.
Only street department expenses,
So,
yeah.
just-
Only equipment for the street department.
That's for me to be on record, making sure that can't cover anybody's stuff in the street department.
Okay, and then this is something I thought I wanted to highlight. The city staff's been really diligent in trying to receive grants, and we have received in the green 3.798, so almost $3.8 million worth of grants just in the last year and a half or so. And we have now submitted for another 3 million grants, just with 2 more grants. So that really does help when it comes to keeping our utility rates down, keeping, being able to pay for projects, not having to go out to bond. There's just so many good benefits that come with these grants. So I wanted to highlight that because that's been very, very beneficial to the city. One thing I just wanted to also highlight that's in the budget. Every year we're paying for some debt. The sales tax portion is helping us pay for our Utopia indebtedness, and it's about $293,000 a year. Because Utopia is doing really well, they're not increasing our debt. They could charge us $411,000 by the contract we have with them, but they're reimbursing us to keep us kind of flat around that $300,000 mark. So that's been nice to not have to pay extra every year in that. But in the future, we could. I think that drops off 2030, 2040. And then two other bonds that we went out in 2019 and 2021, and they're paid for by the water utility rates. Obviously, they're the secondary water bonds. And I was going through this with the mayor, and we have Service Area 4 in here for $2 million. We could have easily bonded for that and had another bond service payment, but it was nice to have that grant. So
When do those mature?
They were 15,
29?
I think.
Yeah, I think there were 15, so 34 and 36.
yeah. So now we go into our expenses that made it into this budget. Again, this is a balanced budget, no property tax increase, and all of these expenses are accounted for in the budget. Every year, our health insurance, we have to go back and renew it. And this year, the renewal came in at 4.9%. It was about $32,000 increase, which isn't out of the ordinary. That's been pretty typical. Actually, some years it's been 18, 19%, so we were happy with 4.9. We are proposing to give the employees across the board a 3% cost of living adjustment. This would be about $179,000 budget impact with salaries and benefits for that. Then if our URS is split up into two different tiers, and those employees who were in the Utah retirement system before 2010, 11, they're on a tier 1 system, and then the ones who were 2011 and beyond are tier 2 employees. And this year, the legislature sent down some crazy rule that said these employees have to give 0.7% of their salary as a contribution, and the cities can't cover that, meaning they can't pay for it before the employees pay for it. The way that we can cover it is by giving the employees a raise so they don't see that impact in their paycheck. And so it's 0.7%, but that was pre-tax. And so after the employees are taxed on it, we need to give them 0.9% for the tier 2 employees. That's about $25,000 is what it will impact our budget. And then every year, as we're going through this personnel portion of inputting into the budget, we look at salaries and where people are in their ranges and just kind of market-based selective salary adjustments. Most of these are $1 adjustments, and typically it's for specifically it's for the library and the senior center. Those two departments are fairly low in their pay as compared to others. And so we gave $1 across the board in those two departments. Total budget impact was $37,000 for the selective salaries. And then we have a presentation by Chief Cordova talking about the police department. And we're going to transition the police department's employees into a different classification plan. It's more of a step scale instead of the traditional classification plan that we've had for the police departments. It's kind of more in line with what other law enforcement agencies do across the state. And so, Dustin, if you want to talk
Before you-
about that,
before-
unless you have other questions.
Before you go
here.
with that, though, What about all our other departments? You know, we concentrate a lot on police and getting them balanced. But we don't talk about the other departments much. So, you know, what about roads and all these other workers? Are they on target? Are they being paid what
Yeah,
they
we're-
need to be?
We're closer because of what you guys did 2 years ago and then last year, bringing them up. I mean, so I think we're fairly competitive with, I don't look at other departments as much as I do as other industries in our area. So the malto mills,
And
I'd be competitive with them for most of my employees.
yeah, and a few of them fell under this $1 to $3 selective salary. If they've been here a while and they're still at the bottom of their pay range, or just some different things that Lindsay and I kind of picked up on as we went through every employee in the city and tried to make
Kind
sure.
of feel their
that-
pain. I want to make sure they're being taken
But
care
they
of.
do
too.
have opportunities with certifications to advance
Okay.
if they utilize those opportunities.
You can in Public Works, you can in the fire department, and I'm sure that you can in police department too. And that was all broken down somewhere in that budget. It showed what a fireman can get for certifications.
So.
I think I've just heard some of the employees saying that they're quite a bit under the scale of what others are being paid, but that's kind of a common thing that could be said in any industry, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and we really do try to temper it with internal equity across the board. Making sure administrative assistants are getting paid and the same in different departments, and laborers are, and different things. So, if you want to go to the chief's presentation. I'll just let you run the.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Mark. All right. It's gonna be a little hard to see, so I printed you guys out the key slides. We just, yeah. This thing never works for me.
I just put new batteries in, so hopefully.
Check. All right, we're good. All right. So this is the why. We're pretty much going to go through an overview of the market. Sorry, did you? Oh, I got one more.
Here.
Yeah.
I can share with him.
No.
Oh, you can.
Oh, you're not going to share, huh?
I'll share my pizza.
So kind of going along with what Brett was talking about, I try to not compare to other departments here. I just need to compare to other police departments because that's the industry we're in. And we're a bit behind. So what I seek to do, and my goal in presenting this to you, is to catch up in some areas. Some areas were great, some areas were behind. There are some consequences if we fall further behind. It's actually less efficient as far as financially goes, and we'll cover that. We lose experienced employees. We're actually in a really dire need of experienced employees right now, and you're going to see a graph, and we could talk about that as well. And that ultimately will reduce the quality service and increase our liability. As you can imagine, law enforcement takes on a ton of liability. Every interaction we have, every time we're on a call, it's a very dangerous job, and also we take on just civil liability, criminal liability. If someone doesn't follow the rules or they're not trained properly, it can lead to bad things. So we're a bit behind, mostly on experience. We talked about that. Here's kind of some comparables with our surrounding agencies. I got this from the Human Resource Department over at Box Elder County. They're very great to work with. We have a good relationship with them. They just pretty much went through a full reevaluation as far as what they're paying for different assignments. They have Deputy 1 all the way down to the sheriff. This is their range. They're kind of using the old school pay range. Some problems with that. That's kind of what we use, and it creates inequality just by the nature. I'm trying to not make this a bad thing, but there are many officers who are newer who are making as much as some of our veteran officers. And that's the problem with not having a pay scale. We create that, not because we're trying to. We do the best we can. Like Mark and Lindsay go through and they try to review data. That's extremely hard to do for an entire large department like ours and every department in the city. The pay scale will take care of that for us because we can see how many years you have on, how much experience you have on, and we're paying everyone within the confines of what they qualify for. Of course, we'll have to adjust to the market as it's ever evolving, but what we're proposing today is not to put us ahead of all these other cities. It's just to put us in the realm where we're competitive in the market, because it's costing us people right now. Here's Brigham. They have probably the best scale in Box Elder, in my opinion. It's very clear. So if you want to know, say you have 4 years on, you're certified, you're competent and trained professional in law enforcement, you'd be at 3349. It's very easy to see. Police officer certification, 4 years on, that's where you land on the scale. Same with PO1. They even start them at 2615 for the training portion of the academy. This also helps employees feel encouraged because they can see, you know what, if I stick with the city, I may not be super happy now, but if I do this and I promote the PO2, then I can actually get a pay raise. It's pretty common in law enforcement agencies across the U.S. as well as the military. Is that correct, Jeff? Okay. Any questions on this scale? This is kind of what we're going towards, but we've made a little tweak. So this is what we're on as far as our scale goes. Officer 1, we're pretty good. It kind of goes a little haywire from there, and we'll get into the illustrations. So Officer 1 and 2, this is our scales comparable with our surrounding cities. Now, this isn't all encompassing of all the cities. These are just who we usually compete with, and that would be Brigham and the sheriff. Pretty good. Officer 1 and 2, we're within the range. We don't have to beat them in every area. In fact, we don't want to beat them because we want to keep this market going. We don't want to add to that. We just got to be within a couple dollars range. I think we offer something special in our city, and for the Lyle who were in our department meeting, people feel kind of special being a part of this city and this community, and they're willing to take a couple bucks less if they love where they work every day. And I think we've done a good job of that as a department. Starts to slide a little bit as you go into the Officer 3 and Sergeant range, and you're going to see exactly what that looks like in manpower. But again, the blue is us, the green is the Sheriff's Department, and the pink color is Brigham. Especially as a sergeant, there's a substantial difference. To give you kind of some of the impact on that, we recently opened actually quite a few promotional opportunities. Typically at an agency, you'll see nearly everyone who qualifies apply for those positions. I want to say, how many did we have for sergeant? Sky?
3, I think, or 4, 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think it was 3. I think we had 3 apply. Super unusual. When I applied to be a sergeant, it was it's a much larger organization, but I think there was about 75. So I was one of 75 that applied for that. Very competitive. We don't really have that out here. A lot of people don't want to take on the extra responsibility and liability because you're responsible for people. It's a completely different job, and we're seeing that. As far as lieutenant, we get a little bit more off the scale. This is kind of just where they're stacking. I talked to the sheriff and the chief in Brigham. That's kind of where they're at. So kind of the results we're seeing, we're motivating police officers to leave after 2 years. We do have a 2-year contract that dedicates them to us. The first year you are in training. We're paying for your salary, for your benefits, for you to be in the police academy. We're equipping you. It's very expensive. I think it's in the slide. It's around $120,000. New hire cost, yep, $120,000 per candidate when it's all said and done. Me and Skylar sat down and broke down the costs. And the problem with that is, we can get entry-level guys, but we don't want to become a starter agency where people come here to get certified to go somewhere else. It's a very inefficient way to use money. This is kind of how it breaks down. Training takes a year, as we talked about. It helps us for about a year. The second year, we actually get an asset. The first year, they're in training, right? They're paired with somebody. They're not out working on their own. And sometimes that gets extended depending on how quick they learn. If we were to lose that, say another agency took somebody after 2 years, it would take approximately 11 and a half years for them to reach that 120,000 threshold. So essentially, it's way more efficient just to pay them a little bit more to hold on to them. And that's kind of why I'm here. I think it's important we take care of our people and we keep the veterans. What it looks like for us And yeah, we got to spend more to save money. I'll show you this one graph. These are just the issues we talked about. There is something to be said about people that have worked in our community for a long time. They do bring that expert knowledge of our actual community, who the problem people are. One thing I love about working with our veterans is they know pretty much every problem child out here by name. They know what they've done before, how dangerous they are, what kind of crimes they're involved in, which is super valuable. This is our experience right now by years on. The first one is your entry-level police officers with 1 to 5 years. As you can see, that's a problem. That's most of our workforce right now is the brand-new entry-level police officers who are still learning how to do the job. I'd say it takes probably, depending on the city, it could take up to 5 years to be pretty competent as a law enforcement officer. If you're working in a high-speed, crazy crime area, like, say, Ogden, you're going to learn really quick, probably get that experience in 2 years. Out here, I think 5 is a fair assessment. From there, we have seen a lot of veteran people leave for other agencies. The bigger issue with that is we lose a lot of our training, as far as these are the people training our new guys. They're also the people having our in-service training. It's super important that we have experienced officers. They're also the mentor for all of our new police officers. Here's a couple points that have been proven why experience matters in a law enforcement officer. They just have less use of force, statistically speaking. They're calm in high stress. That comes with repetition. I'm sure our fire military guys can speak to that. The more stuff you're in, the more you can adapt to those environments. Actually reduce liability because they usually know how to do the job. They're up to speed. Again, we need them for all of our trainings and specialty assignments like K-9, SWAT team, detectives. We talked about the mentorship. This is just a different graph where we're good, okay, bad, and then where we're at from there. And let's look at the solution. So that's redundant. This is kind of the scale we're proposing. It's within the confines of the scale we have, except it will require us to make adjustments to put people where they should be based on their time on, their training and experience. You'll have your officer ones, which most people will fall within that range of the officer 1, officer 2, because we're a very young department. It's mostly our vets we're trying to hold on to now and also attract more. We're down 2 right now. I do have some people that are certified, and that would save us that $120,000 investment. But right now I can't afford them, because if I bring them over now, we're going to bump them. Even if I paid them within the market of today, it's going to hurt other people in the department. So our hope is that we can fix this and then attract some more certified guys with experience so we can even things out. This is just a sergeant and a lieutenant scale. Again, we're aiming to go just slightly below Brigham and the county, but still be in the realm of what they're paying these positions. And this is Tara. We just would reclassify her. I think it's a what is it, a C1 or something? Yeah. Tara does a lot as far as our police department goes. I'll just swing back to that. She's managing our grants, which we've been fortunate. I think we've gotten 3 or 4 this year. So she handles all that. She's also leading our peer support, and now she supervises 2 employees. This is what it breaks down to be. It's about $51.38 per hour, or around $102,760, based on our calculations, going through, looking at everybody on the pay scale based on their time on experience, and we would make that adjustment, but that's the fiscal impact of this. Is there any questions or anything in those that you guys have? Go ahead, Blair.
I have a question on what's your structure? I mean, how many sergeants do you have, and does it just go years of service, or do they have to test out, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we go back here, short answer is, what is our number at exactly now?
Sergeants, we have 4 with 1 opening.
Yeah, so we got 1 open, we have 1 on patrol. What's our total number, Sky?
Sergeants will be 5 when they're full,
No, I mean staff.
21 when they're fully staffed.
Yeah, 21 total. So we're down 2 now, 1 sergeant position, 1 officer position. We just lost an officer, unfortunately. The way it works is we'd actually have qualifications for that. So in this packet, right now, the way it works is kind of broken. So if you were hired today, Blair, you'd be an officer 1. After next year, you'd be an officer 2. And the year after that, you'd be an Officer 3. No certifications, you could do the bare minimum every day, you're gonna bump up to that higher scale. Now, it wouldn't come with a substantial raise because we don't really do that, we're just on this range, and we try to keep it fair, and we try to look at what people are making and make things fair and make little adjustments. Very inefficient, and we do have some discrepancies right now where we'll have some officers who make even more than a supervisor, which is terrible for morale, and that's the reason we lost one of our really good supervisors. So there's really no qualifications other than time on right now to bump up. What we're proposing in here, and I don't think it's in the slideshow, but there is a paper near the back of your packet. I want to say it's like the third one back. It just says higher standards. And basically, if you look at this, and this is similar to what Brigham does, it's what we would ask that they do to meet the next level. So Officer 1, you can start there, no experience. You just got to complete the police academy, hold all your required certifications, and maintain the minimum of 40 hours per year. Officer 2, you would have a minimum 1 year of patrol. You got to complete your probation. You volunteer to work 2 coverage shifts, no major discipline, so if you're getting in trouble, you're going to kind of set yourself back. You're participating in community engagement once per quarter. That could be the schools, teaching, training. There's a lot of need for it. And complete 20 hours of extra training. So you're getting that extra training, you're becoming more of an asset. And then Officer 3 kicks it up even further. It's minimum 3 years with a 4-year degree or 8 years LEO experience. And this is a draft, we can always edit this to meet the needs of our department, but we're essentially creating a higher standard to motivate people to take on more responsibilities. We have pretty much the same 2 or 3 people that host all the trainings, they're doing all the firearm certifications, they're FTOs, they're hard chargers, they're great employees, but they're taking on a lot by themselves. And there's so many more capable people who just aren't motivated to do the extra at this point, or even tests for sergeant, lieutenant positions. So we hope to right that wrong with this proposal. But yeah, if you want to look at that can kind of illustrate that to you, Blair.
So can they progress faster than with just time?
Yeah, kind of one of the things we were looking at is the education. There's no substitute for experience, as we can attest to that, but education definitely helps, and I would like to attract them to take advantage of that. We've had a few recently complete their bachelor's degrees, and that is something we would account for, especially in a promotional process. Typically for a sergeant position, we've had to kind of bring that down a little bit just to get people to put in, but normally they would require that. If you're going to test for sergeant, you have to have a 4-year degree and X amount of experience. Right now, we had to roll that back just so we have enough sergeants. But I'd like to bring that back, and I think with something like this, we would do that. Go ahead, Blair.
Yeah, I'd like to see them stay more than an Officer 3,
Sure.
you know, and I don't think we help pay for their degrees and all that. But give me a little more information on this, participate in a community engagement once per quarter of school or whatever.
Yeah.
It don't seem like a lot of engagement in the city, one extra.
Yeah, again, this is a draft, it just gives you an idea of what we can put in, but yeah, we'd want them to participate in community events. We always have community events. A lot of people do volunteer for those. We just want to see them interacting with the public. I mean, we've asked them to be more proactive as far as like get out and interact with people, not just sit in your car, because it's easy to do that, especially when you're not super motivated and there's no incentive for that. Complete extra training, that makes them a better officer. FTO certifications, that's the future. Who's going to train the future of our law enforcement? That's FTOs, our Field Training Officer Program. We have a couple. I'd like to see a lot more in that area, and hold a current instructor certification. So we need instructors on less lethal training. We need them on medical, you name it. There's all kinds of areas that there's a deficit in. And that's caused me, as well as Skylar, as well as a lot of our sergeants, to take on a lot of that responsibility. I'd like to encourage the guys, especially our veteran guys, to do that. And then the other thing is special assignment, past or present service, detective, K-9, SRO, SWAT, COP detective, strike force. maybe even secondary assignment as gangs. These are all things that we are in dire need for, but very few people put in for, because it's a lot more responsibility and can pose quite a bit of civil liability as well. And a lot of them are leadership positions. You know, if you're a SWAT guy and you respond to that call and you're there first, you're in charge. You're getting all the intel for that team and you're preparing them for who knows what we have. So, and even on SWAT tryouts, how many did we have for tryouts? It's like 3?
I don't remember for last year, but we had, in this last go around, 3 people just put in, is also.
Yeah, it's a tough assignment, so, but this will motivate more people to step in. And this is similar to what Brigham has. They have what they call a master officer as well. That's more money, but I'd love to see that. I'm trying to be more reasonable. You guys have already done so much for us. I'm trying to take the baby steps to right the wrongs and then, carry on from there as we grow.
That one, Dustin.
Yeah, go ahead, Blair.
So transfers, like an experienced guy, like,
Like a lateral hire?
Yeah.
Sure.
So you'll just bring them and decide where they fit in there?
Correct. So we would bring him over, we'd look at his years of service, certifications, what he's done in the past, and then based on that, we're going to try to assume the best, but they're going to know all this information. One thing I like about Brigham, and this has been a struggle for us, is we'll get a lot of people interested from other organizations, and they'll come over and be like, what am I making? And it starts this negotiation thing. And while I love the ability to flow with that and get a very competent guy, I can't sway too far off what our existing guys are doing without killing morale. So Brigham actually posts theirs online, most agencies do, and that will deter people that are just coming over for money in some circumstance, but it will also give us realistic applicants where they'll come over, they'll say, okay, this is where I have the potential to be, I'm interested, then they apply. It eliminates the drama of trying to negotiate and stay fair. As I said, we do have a really squared away guy. I won't overshare, but he's a very good cop. He wants to come work for us. Right now, without a skill like this, I couldn't take him on, because if I did, he would be ahead of people with the same amount of certifications, experience, so on, and that is just bad for morale. And I don't, want to tell everybody, hey, don't tell anybody what you make, because the reality is it's all public information. So, yeah, I think that'll help big time as far as attracting laterals, and ultimately that will save us that initial investment.
Your assistant
Yeah.
salaries, are they consistent with the rest of the staff in the city with like jobs?
I'm not sure, and it's weird to try to classify her with other jobs and responsibilities. I'm not familiar with those. All I can do is tell you what she does for our department. As far as qualifications go too, she's just finishing up her human resources degree, which I think can help alleviate a lot of responsibility on our HR department. I think we're probably the biggest full-time department in the city right now, and I don't know how needy we are on Lindsay, but I think it would help. In addition to that, it's the amount of money we're able to take in the form of grants that she manages. And as you can imagine, I've reached out to those professional grant writers and worked hand in hand with them. So far, that has produced about $0 and 0 cents. Whereas when we do it and we get the grants, which I've been fortunate enough, and Skylar has, to attract these to our department, that's only half the battle. The other half is managing these. So in my opinion, she's worth her weight in gold. Financially, she brings in and allows us to take on that extra money, which helps the
You guys see
department.
where I'm going with this? I mean, if we have
Sure.
other departments that has someone that's, and they're getting paid, all of a sudden we got this, people trying to climb back up to get on the pay scale. So I think that's the one concern I have with this, is I just like to make sure that across the board, like jobs in the city are getting paid pretty close to equal, or adjust this so that they are.
Sure, yeah. And I think we've talked about a little bit as far as like reclassifying her job because she does so much extra. I see the challenge for the council. In a perfect world, we can pay all the employees the same across the board, and then you avoid that. I don't think it's practical. Everybody has different jobs, different responsibilities, and different certifications, qualifications. I think that all needs to be in account. But I'll tell you, she helps make that department run, and we're doing a great job because of her, and I can't say enough positive things, but I totally understand the concern with that. It's not too far beyond the realms for her area of responsibility, her education, and the extra she takes on, so I think we're right there. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm an optimist that this is going to help with what you've alluded to. Number one, bring us better and more candidates
Right.
for the jobs, and number two, be able to retain the quality people that we have and not lose them after we've invested so much to get them up to being a good officer with all the training.
Sure.
How optimistic are you that that will succeed?
I think it will succeed this year. I wish I could say that this solves our problem long-term. Unfortunately, I'm sure I've talked about this before, and I know I've talked about it with the mayor and the city management. We're in a crazy police market. The supply and demand is unprecedented. I mean, I could tell you when I got hired, I was one of 500 people applying for the same job, and we were happy to get $15 an hour, And nowadays, we're not even filling police academies anymore. And before people, especially if they self-sponsor and pay for themselves to go through the academy, there's people recruiting them before they even get out that door, even before they're halfway through their training, myself included. We have to stay competitive within that range. One of our best recruitment tools that we've had is word of mouth from our people recruiting other people, because it's a great place to work, and we have a very good, strong culture. And I'll say, Tara, for instance, built that culture in a lot of ways. She's overseeing the peer support. That's been huge. And we've sat down with Mark and the fire chief, and it's not just making a positive impact on our department, it is the fire side as well. It's very utilized, and it's important. So overall, I'm with you. I want to be optimistic. I want to hope that things slow down, especially with inflation and the crazy stuff in the economy. But we don't drive the market. We're just trying to stay in the ball game. Really, it's kind of been Brigham out here that's setting the tone, and we're just playing catch up. And in talking with the sheriff, he's kind of shares the sentiment. We're not trying to beat Brigham, man. We're trying to come right underneath them. He's trying to get right underneath them. We're just trying to get below him so we could stay in the game a little bit. So hopefully that answers your question. I just don't know. I hope things slow down. The last thing I'll touch on is kind of my concerns if we don't take action. Again, it's redundant, but we do kind of motivate people to leave after their contract. I'd hate to see that happen, especially after we put the time and effort into them. There's no incentive to take on extra duties or to promote. Again, it's a lot more liability. And right now, we're really not attracting certified officers. I've had a couple applicants, and then when we get into the pay, they're no longer interested because it's just too far off from other departments. And my biggest concern is I'd hate to keep losing experienced officers. We just can't function without that experience. We need people that are competent out there training them. And the last thing is it will empower us to hold a higher standard. I don't believe that people should necessarily just get more money for having a pulse. I think you should take on extra work and help out. So, any other questions, council members? Cool, I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Dustin.
It's already in the budget, right? This pay scale idea.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Mark.
All right. So we'll, sorry. Continue on with the, one more slide on personnel. So as Lyle mentioned, all of this that is being presented tonight is within the budget. There's one slide at the very end that will just kind of show you what's upcoming for future years, but, and we can talk about future capital projects at another time. But everything that's presented tonight is within the balanced budget. So this is our request for new personnel. And the first.
This is Heather with Web Tours.
The first three are within the general fund. And, well, I guess some of that first one will be paid out of the fire department as well. But we currently have a billing clerk at the front office. She's been doing a great job, been here a couple of years. And the fire department was in dire need of an admin assistant, and so we've actually given her 10 extra hours a week. And starting in July, what we're proposing is to start paying her full-time and giving her benefits for her work here. And that would, it's basically 30,000 because it's the additional benefits and then 10 extra hours a week for next year. And Chief's here as well if he wants to talk more about this, but we have the animal control officer. So right now, Garland is paying for a part-time animal control technician, I think they call it. Is that right? Technician but she is doing a lot of work, and she's cleaned up our animal control. She's here, Julie, over there. But she's done a ton for the animal services department in the city. Again, she's a Garland employee right now, part-time, and Greg is still down there helping out. So he's doing animal control as well as code enforcement. So what we are proposing is to hire Julie on full-time for Tremont and City, and then Garland would continue to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Garland, in their contract, they're supposed to give an animal control technician, so somebody that could work nights and weekends, off hours for when our full-time employee is not there. And then our code officer could go full-time code officer instead of being shared between animal control and code. As we've grown as a city, we want to keep the city as clean as possible. We feel it best that he focuses mostly on code unless it's like an animal emergency. He has such good experience when it comes to the emergencies for animals that we would still put him on those calls, but he would go full-time code officer. And then,
I understand, or I've heard that Box Elder County is kind of interested in partnering up with you on some of the animal control. And if that were the case, I mean, we would probably have to get a bigger facility and but they would also divvy up and help participate in some salaries and maybe some maintenance costs and whatnot in the building and maybe even part of the building.
Yeah, we would love for that to happen. We've had a couple meetings with the mayor, their city leadership. I'm all for that. There is a need in Box Elder County that's not being met by most cities. The difficulty is motivating them to hold every city accountable and fund that. The purpose of this is we are behind, and I do have a slide that shows the numbers, but we kind of worked with Brigham to see what we should have to meet our needs. I don't know when or how that will work. I do know there's a lot of talk. What I can tell you is this. Brigham has kind of drawn a line in the sand. They are not taking outside animals. They're worrying about Brigham, and they have the staff to do that. Whereas they have a contract right now with the county, that's now motivating the county to try to figure something out for their city or all the cities they serve, because right now they don't have a plan. They've leaned on us, and that's okay. They've also leaned on Brigham. But when Brigham draws that line, our surplus is going to go through the roof, so we also need to draw the line. And the commissioners understand this, and they're trying to seek funding. My opinion is they're going to have to do a tax increase to do that and maybe fund a building, maybe donate land. There's a lot of ideas floating out there. Regardless of all that, put all that aside, what does Tremont need to function? We need to have at least one shelter person by our numbers, by the number of animals we're bringing in. And as Mark said, it will also help us on the code enforcement side. Another thing of note is we've kind of have been trying to keep things going well with Garland, and in that we've helped them with some code enforcement things, give them some advice, help guide them. But I've kind of drawn the line in the sand for them that they now need to get a code enforcement officer and take care of their stuff. That's not in our contract, but they are in our contract to provide at least a part-time employee as well. So by the numbers, we're behind in this area. It's something we need to do for our future with our growth. But I would love to see exactly what you're talking about. I'm glad you know about that, but it seems like we go to these meetings and not a lot is getting decided on. Maybe the mayor has an opinion on that, but
I agree with everything you're saying. It is an issue with some of the outlying communities, and they sort of rely on the county to take care of those situations for them, but there's really no place for a lot of these animals to go, and that's creating a real problem for both the cities.
yeah, and if that was to happen, they would lean on us. They don't have any experience. They've never ran a shelter. I would say Julie would be a fantastic person to head that shelter if that happened. I would fully advocate for that. She's created a ton of relationships with a lot of donors, and that's brought a lot of money in as far as helping and fundraising. Kind of running theirself at this point when it comes to funding. So again, I'm going to say she's worth her weight in gold. But as we assess that with the county commissioners, I absolutely think we should do that as a team and bring them all together and build. But I think what's on the table last was having 2 shelters to meet their needs because they're really all over the place. One would be to expand the Brigham facility, and that's between the county and Brigham. And the other would be to have a partnership with us. We'd likely need more beds and then take care of them on the other end. I don't know what it's going to look like, but yeah, I would love to see that happen. I think it'd help all the cities.
We don't have room out there to expand.
No.
So we need to move
No,
somewhere.
yeah, and frankly, speaking freely, I think they should provide the land and possibly the building, but that's going to cost a ton of money. So,
I think too that I've been thinking a little bit about this, just my idea on it is, I don't know why we couldn't consider putting a shelter out there by this new park we're putting in, where we're gonna have the dog park and all that,
yeah,
out by the storage sheds, because it's secluded out there.
sure.
It would be, so, we might be able to take a corner of that property and be able to put a nice dog shelter out there. So think about that, but that's something I had on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to any suggestions. We're doing it, and we have a facility for our needs right now, but we're growing too, and eventually we're going to outgrow that, and we'll have to take that on. I'd much rather share that with the county. I can tell you the sheriff's all for it. If he works well with us, I think we have his support, and we have the county commissioner's support. It's just a matter of them coming up with the funds and figuring out this issue on their level. But yeah, I think that is the future. Hopefully, we can decide on some things, but ultimately, that's the direction. Good.
And how many animals can we house?
Yeah, I'm going to kick that over to you, Julie. Comfortably with you being part-time right now.
To be honest, if I'm being completely honest, I panic if we have more than 5 dogs. We only have 10 dog kennels, and so for us to be able to shift to keep diseases down and keep animals from attacking each other, from attacking us, we have to be able to move them from one kennel to another kennel to clean this kennel, unless I have enough volunteers there to take all the animals out, to have them out of the facility to do deep cleaning. Summertime, that's a lot easier, but during the school year, it's a lot harder to get volunteers there during the day to do that. Right now, my husband goes every morning and every night and walks any dog in the shelter. So honestly, right now, I'm relying on my husband to do the job with me, so.
Yeah, and I can speak to that as well. When I started, I knew Greg was overwhelmed, and I'd heard there's a lot of problems not being solved, and it definitely humbled me because I went over there. It's like, oh, I'll help with the dogs. We'll take care of the shelter. Man, I was there every day for 2 days getting my butt kicked. That is a full-time job. I mean, taking care of those dogs, and we were at full capacity at the time. And then we started that adoption program that was really positive. And one other thing to note is that the governor has set the standard at this point that we're going to be a no-kill state. He's pretty much put it out there publicly. I think they even asked Julie to speak at one of the events. It's kind of like the standard for Utah, and I know Brigham's not going backwards to a kill facility. There's always exceptions, like dangerous animals and things like that. We'd like to meet that standard as well. Same with the county. I'm sure that they would share that sentiment as we go forward towards the future. So this is more to keep our head above the water in the meantime, but the hope is that we can create a long-term solution with the county, working together and saving everybody a lot of money and meeting that need. Because right now, it's just not being met, especially in most of these cities. To my knowledge, the only people that actually have a facility out here is us and Brigham.
What size kennel would you need? 20?
How many kennels?
How big do you want to go?
Oh,
do-
you can go 500. We don't need that many.
If we partnered with the county, I think we would easily need 50.
Okay.
It's a high demand. I mean, we had 13 dogs in 10 kennels for 2 weeks last month. It kicked all of our butts and then some. I quit like 4 times every day.
Yeah, and that's definitely not what we want.
And so is that 5 animals a day that's causing all this? Or was you handling more than 5 dogs?
We had 13 dogs
13?
straight. We had no room for more intakes. I was relying on social media, anything else that was out running at large. I was relying on the work I do on social media to find their home, get them home, because there was no room to bring them to the shelter. So it gets pretty intense. The officers were amazing, helped me do that. We had one officer that had 2 dogs at his house for the day. It's pretty bad. We need a lot more space.
Yeah, Greg?
The reason I said that is we really need to long-range this, and with the state going no-kill, it's probably better for us to start looking at what's our adoption center gonna look like? What's the vision around what we're doing with these animals? Because at some point, Best Friends and some of these different rescues that are helping us are gonna pull back to help other communities, and we have to be prepared for that.
All right.
Cool. Any other questions?
Questions? Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin.
Can I backtrack for one moment? The one above that.
Yeah.
So the billing clerk, fire department, admin assistant, and if I heard you right, it's going to add basically 10 hours a week. Is that the number of hours that the fire chief then will have help?
Yes, and he currently does. We started that a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
And has it helped? 2 thumbs up from the fire chief.
Awesome. One of the things that we discussed when we had our meeting was the fact that he's having to do admin assistant work, which takes him away from doing a lot of other things that could be better benefiting the city, one of which is applying for grant funds for that training center and getting that here that he has some success in the past with, and we need him working on that and not the admin duties. And Chief, you're okay with the 10 hours? That's,
It's working well for the time being, you bet.
okay, thank you.
Working very well.
Can I say one thing about it? She ain't gonna wanna come back. Yesterday was her birthday. They cooked her breakfast. They brought her a cake. He took her to Ogden through a life flight thing. She gotta fly home in the helicopter. She ain't gonna wanna work for us. She's gonna go wanna work for him.
All right, we're going to take we've been at this for an hour and 15 minutes. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
The next new personnel was within our Parks Department. Currently, our Parks Superintendent is, I think he has 32 years on. And so he could retire at any time. He's younger, fortunately for us. And so I think he's going to stay for a few more years. But we'd love to get somebody hired underneath him to show the ropes of the parks and where all the valves are and the sprinkler lines and all the maintenance and
When Christmas lights,
Christmas
there's only one
lights.
guy that knows how to do Christmas lights when you're gone, and he is it.
yeah. So and you know, in the next years, Brett mentioned the one park, the Stokes Park. There'll be extra park acreage as well, and we'll definitely we could put this person to work with beautification projects and maintenance projects and helping bring in ball tournaments and being the one prepping fields or whatever it takes. So we're proposing for that. And so those three come out of the general fund, which is mainly funded by property tax, ongoing property taxes. The next two are split between the utility funds and the property tax because it has the streets or, well, the HR director. So a lot of the I think a third of the salary comes out of the recorder's budget or the human resource budget. And then they do a lot of work for other departments. They are the HR director for the other departments as well, or the city recorder here at nighttime, or doing minutes for our utility funds and stuff. So a portion of their budget comes from, or a portion of their salaries come from the utility funds. So what we're proposing, currently Lindsay does, she's our HR director for the whole city, and she is our city recorder. And if you look at kind of overtime that she gets and the job demand that she has, we feel it's now feasible that we split that job and create an HR director, and we create a city recorder, and then you know, she would be one or the other at that point.
Can I jump into this?
Yeah.
I'm gonna fully say I was late to the game on this. This got sprung on me a couple weeks ago, and I'm 100% behind the idea. I've just got a little bit different vision, and that's because sometimes Lindsay, in my opinion, hasn't been fully recognized for how much on the financial side of things she actually helps with. So as we're going through reconciling out the entire month, she is the one doing that behind the scenes. So she's taking all this critical city accounts and reconciling those. I come through and review them to make sure she's done them, but she is the point person on that. During the past 5 years or so, the amount of requirements coming out from the state and other places regarding how expenses need to be reported and some of the information that's being accumulated and just the growth of the city has augmented that responsibility. So it's not just that she's an HR director, because she has a huge responsibility for that. She does payroll, but she's also functioning in essence as the financial accountant, doing the financial accounting work, so that I can come in and review it and make sure and do the general oversight of it and provide my expertise in certain adjustments. But she's the one who's behind the scenes doing it all. I would retitle this, and I know I'm dropping on you, Mark, because I had to double check a couple things with Lindsay, but it would be HR director / city financial accountant. And she would be our general ledger accountant and take care and oversee the whole accounting side and making sure all those reconciliations and all that day-to-day accounting was done. And then we'd have a city recorder that would take care of all the city administrative functions for prepping minutes and
Public
taking
notices
care of all of
and-
that. It has a good structure to it because it keeps all the financial, and from my standpoint, it really finally would recognize Lindsay's capability in this financial arena that I rely on a ton.
Thank you.
Question, I need to be educated. Would that normally be a function, that fiscal function be in the treasurer's office, or where would that normally be
No,
housed?
the treasurer actually takes care of all the cash receipting and all the revenue functions. The city recorder by law is responsible for the expenditure side of things.
So that's normal then?
It's very normal to have the city recorder. Now, I'm not gonna say other cities don't have their treasurer do financial accounting. Cities will take advantage of wherever their expertise is, especially cities of our size. We're blessed to have a Lindsay that has both the HR capacity and the financial understanding to take care of these things. And having it, we have typically all throughout the past had that function centered in the recorder's office for the expense accounting, and the treasurer's office really functions on the cash receipting and getting all the revenues recorded in the right spots. Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. The next one down, we call it a Public Works employee. Basically, as we know, Paul will be retiring in the next fiscal year, more than likely. It's hopefully not, but maybe. And so to give us some financial freedom, I don't know what the right word would be, but to give us some options on how we replace Paul when it comes about, we put in a half of an FTE for a new Public Works director. Maybe this person trains with Paul for a few months. Maybe we promote from within. Maybe we split it into 2 jobs. We don't know that currently, but we want the money in there because we know it will more than likely happen. And so, we're just putting it in there so that we have some options when we make that plan. Yeah.
I comment from my side of things. Something that I see happening, and Tremont has actually experienced it. Paul's an incredible individual that can keep track of all the water standards, all the sewer standards, all the sewer treatment standards, and all the stormwater standards, and manage all of that. We had a person doing building inspecting and planning and zoning, and when we went out to try and find that person, we couldn't. And we had to split that because the movement in society is not to take on, but to rather specialize and take care of an area. And so we now contract out the building inspection, and we were fortunately enough to find a zoning person. I personally have expressed concerns to the mayor, to Mark. I am personally concerned. I haven't talked to Paul 100% about this, but I don't know if we're going to find another Paul-like person that's going to be able to take on all 4 of those areas and be an expert. I think you can find a lot of people that can do water and sewer and roads. I forgot roads in there. Sorry, I didn't mean to diminish you. That was rude. I apologize on record. But to be able to take upon all the roads, but then sewer treatment is its own beast. And correct me if I'm wrong, but sewer treatment has a whole different level of standards, and we can see that when the engineers come in and present on this. And so I think this is 100% great move in the right direction that possibly could lead to where we actually need another director level type position to handle and break out some of these responsibilities, because Paul is amazing. Paul has a wealth of knowledge, and when it walks out of here, we're going to lose a lot.
Well, a concern though is, and I'm not going down a negative route on this, but if we wait till Paul leaves, it's going to be too late.
That's why we want this
Yeah,
now.
well, I understand that, but we need to assess that at some point soon. If we're going to need more than one, if we're going to need a couple, so that we can start to prepare for that. And so the sooner we can move on this, I think the better, so we can determine what the future of Tremont is and what we need to do to prepare for those jobs. You know?
We have to get Paul's knowledge, and you gotta get it from somebody.
We're working with the guys under, learn
But
something.
I mean,
Okay,
You realize I came on when we barely broke 5,000.
right.
I've been here going on 24 years as a public works director.
So
Growing with the city.
if we need 2 or 3 people, we need to know that.
I'm thinking you need 30 years.
Oh,
All in favor? Oh, wait, I can't do that, sorry.
I know we got a long night tonight, but I think we need to have a closed meeting because there's a couple names that have come up. We need to discuss what we're talking about right here. And I hope Paul stays to the closed meeting.
Well, we've only got a few more slides, I think.
Yeah, we got, well, quite a few.
Quite a few were.
Yeah, I would like to get through it so you know what's in the budget. And I can be quick. Everything from here on out is all in the memo, but we could be quick about it, or, you know, we
What we'll
can.
do is, I think what we'll do is let you go ahead and finish your presentation, because we only have, you know, we've got to be able to at least get the tentative budget
Right.
taken care of. And then if we have to, we'll take a little time at the very beginning of our regular session.
Okay.
On the closed session.
Yeah. All right. And then just the last one, it would all be funded from the storm drain utility. As Curtis mentioned, the state hands down a lot of regulations and requirements, and we want to be prepared for a new requirement that could possibly be handed down from the state. So we would put them in the budget as well. Okay, let's see if I can do it, Lindsay. Yeah. All right, so now I've just kind of broken it up into categories, what some of the expenses are, what some of the big projects are. Some of these could fall under the utilities department, some of them could fall under general fund. I tried to just put the whole number of how much this project would cost. And so, you know, like the 1000 North widening project, it's actually going to be paid for out of 3 or 4 different budgets, because there's a secondary water aspect to it, there's a storm drain aspect to it, there's, you know, just a road replacement, not necessarily widening aspect to it, and then the widening. So I'm just trying to put it all together so you know how much it costs. It falls within the budgets in different budget categories possibly. But the 3 major road projects that we're doing are 1000 North, and you'll see tonight that we've received bids for that, and that construction should be starting in the next month or so. And then 1650 West, we just have an engineer's estimate on that one. That is, so we don't have bids for it, but it's over by John Deere Tractors, Stotts Equipment. And that will kind of start opening up behind those businesses on Main Street, so that some connections can make their way through and more development can happen down there. Then we have 12,000 South, which is Rocket Road.
100 South.
Yeah, sorry, 1200 South, which is Rocket Road. And that will be kind of a widening project there by the railroad tracks to the cemetery. And then parking lot at Jeannie Stevens Park, or parking lot at the Parks Building. Right now, the Parks Building's gravel and puddles and mud. We would hope to get a parking lot built there, and then Jeannie Stevens Park just needs a resurface. So those are our road expenditures. The water department has a couple of big projects we've talked about a lot. The ASR project, that's the Aquifer Storage and Recovery, trying to pump water back into the springs. And then the East Canal Equalization Basin, if River's Edge gets started, then they have to do a pump station, and before we can pull water out of the East Canal, we have to put a equalization basin in. Both of those have been funded by grant money. I don't know why this doesn't want to work, Lindsay. Oh.
Just get mine, don't worry about nobody else's.
The fire and EMS, kind of the major expenses here. The fire truck purchase, it was supposed to be purchased this budget year, but because of delays, it's moved to next year. And then an ambulance, the council's already approved the purchase of that ambulance. I think it was Lacroix who ordered it. Yes.
On the fire truck purchase, you had told me that there's such a backup in orders that there's a real time frame involved in getting those. So when could you actually have it?
We expect to have that in spring of 2025
Wow.
is when we expect, but it's been on order for more than a year now.
Yeah, we ordered it a year and a half ago or so.
24 to
But isn't
36
that just
months,
rollover money?
and some vendors are up to 4 years.
Yeah.
We're just rolling that
Both-
money over, right?
That money's all rolled over, right?
Yep, that was all rolled over.
I
We
bought
didn't
the
spend any
same
of it.
exact truck for Northrop Grumman, 6 months later, and I have to pay tax, and it's $780,000.
Really.
Exact same truck, same
Spec,
spec.
same truck.
I know Robert was really wanting to get it done quick because he knew they were gonna go up.
Threw the money out for the chassis. That saved us
Yeah.
33,000 or something by getting that chassis in. So we done good there.
Within our vehicles and other equipment, I guess that could have went in the fire and EMS one too, but there's 4 police vehicles that are due for replacement. And if we get a new parks employee, they'll need a truck, a mini excavator in the water department, and replace the air compressor. So that would be at the water department as well. And then, whoops.
Well, there's your LED sign, right?
Parks, trails, and beautification. Senior center, there's a fence along the Lazy Boy side that needs to be replaced, and the landscaping. A lot of this actually might get done this budget year. This is all a rollover. If it is done this budget year, we'll take it out or just not spend the funds in there. So, and then the Central Canal or Central Trail construction on the Rocky Mountain Power property. If we want to keep that easement, I know we've talked about this and possibly moving it and not constructing it along the Rocky Mountain Power property, but if we want to keep the easement, then the trail has to be constructed by, it's in the memo, but it's the end of next year, I think. Is that right? Yeah, it would be because it's in this budget year, so. And other ones, Councilmember Rhodey has got some bids and talked to the landowner on Main Street, the Marble Motel sign, maybe swapping that out for an LED sign for the city. And then cemetery expansion, start to put roads and sprinklers and different things in on that west side of the cemetery and on the land that we have. So in Main Street, the RDA fund, this is a rollover from this year because we didn't get to the Midland Square or the Main Street upgrades, depending on what the city decides to do now with the public input that we're receiving. We have budgeted that money again. And then we've included this facade grant program. If we want to start doing some facade grants, there's some money in for that. Public realm enhancements, that's been used to pay for some of the murals that we do, some of the upgrades along Main Street. I was talking to the mayor about this, and maybe we could use some of that money to do some public-private partnerships with some business owners and maybe clean up some of their parking lots and then make it so it's allowable for the public to park on their parking lots. You know, we could put some of those wayfinding signs for parking, and so we just have some money in there to have some options to do some of these improvements along Main Street, some of the smaller improvements. And then in the other RDA fund, we have $1 million. We have some moderate income housing strategies, and we need to show the state that we are implementing those strategies and tracking those strategies, and this is some funding to help pay for those moderate income housing plan strategies that the RDA has approved, or the RDA board has approved. And
Was it strategy E that deals with, new public employees with maybe getting a down payment or something on a moderate income?
yeah,
loan?
I think it was
Can't remember.
N,
It was
strategy N.
one of them.
So one of our strategies is to implement a mortgage assistance program for employees of the county or municipality. There is, who does he work? Somebody with Bragg, I think, is putting together a moderate income housing, or kind of this, that goes along with this strategy, an employee assistance program. And we were going to want to take the structure of that. I haven't seen it yet. We've been reaching out to him, asking him for it. He said it was close.
I'll get with Bragg and see where they're at on that.
Okay. But yeah, there's money in there so that we can implement some of those strategies.
It's news to me. I haven't heard anything about this.
About the strategies?
Yeah, this implement strategies for $1 million.
Well, it's,
We identified the strategies last year. Remember
Yeah,
the 4 strategies.
we had to pick 3.
But I'm like you, I didn't really realize we had $1 million to apply to them.
yeah, so this is just a rollover from last year's funds.
Yeah, it's RDA.
73.
It's Fund 73, and it's been sitting on about $2 million for years, been presented in the financials, sitting there as needing to be used for low to moderate income housing. That
Is
was
this the
requirement of it.
West Liberty Food?
Yeah.
Was
RDA?
I can't remember if it was 10 or 20% of the city's share slid off into to hold the RDA to be used for low to moderate income housing. And so we have the money just sitting there ready for a strategy to be implemented.
Let's get her done.
In talking to some other communities and at the league conference about this issue, everybody recognizes a challenge that the state's given us, a legislature, but nobody has any resolutions for moderate income housing. Affordable housing, there are some opportunities, but the moderate income housing, whew, I mean, chump change, a home here or a home there, but it's so small, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a gap that is we almost can't do anything for it, but.
If we put
Help.
it in perspective, and I'm not talking about direct assistance, but I'm going to use that as an example. If you allocated $100,000 buy down on a mortgage, I'm just using a number, at $2 million at 100,000, I mean, you're only talking about 20 homes. The 20 people being assisted.
I'll give you an example running the numbers. So none of the homes qualify that are for sale in our town. So I looked at travel trailers, single wides, older ones. But you want to go into the travel trailer park, $735 a month HOA fee. That's your space and some of the utilities. So that doesn't leave you about a couple $100, literally, for your mortgage and insurance and et cetera to go with it. It's crazy.
I think the alternative dwelling units is the way to look at it. And, maybe we can use some of that funding to pay for the license to, the building license and to build some of the,
Yeah, that's I think that's strategy E
Yeah.
on there, is to help facilitate ADUs and
Yeah, and because, you can't really get a loan on them, but maybe we can do some strategies to help people build more of those so that we can provide more of those in our town. And those would fall within the moderate income housing.
Just the numbers, I just haven't seen anything with any other communities either where the numbers have panned out. Again, onesies and twosies, when you have a need for hundreds of these types of homes.
Okay. So this is the last slide here. This is just, these are not in the budget. But this is, I just took a quick glance at our 5-year capital improvement plan of things that are coming up, and just want the council to know, doing those transfers is going to be crucial to pay for future projects. We have treatment plan upgrades. I know Councilmember Holt has talked about these treatment plan upgrades. In the budget, we have some engineering costs for the treatment plan upgrades, but after you go through the engineering and the state testing, we won't be able to get to the construction for that until fiscal year 26. So we know it's coming, but and we've been saving for it, but it won't be until fiscal year 26. So we got to look forward to that. There's 3 parks that we have that are storm drain detention basins, and as well as will be nice parks for these neighborhoods that are being developed around. There's another ambulance, even though this one took a couple years to get here. We'll need another one within the next couple of years, and we got to think about replacing those, defibrillators, the fire training tower. playgrounds and lights at North Park. You know, we have multiple road projects we could do and other service areas for our water. So just kind of to keep it on the front of your mind, the projects never end, you know, and if we had unlimited funding, it would be fantastic, but we don't. And
You have roughly $20 million worth of projects up there, and hopefully there's a good potential for grants for a number of those.
right, and that, yeah, that helps with, you know, the mayor's put out for $3 million worth of grants already, and I think the parks, we could get a lot of grant funding for the parks. The roads, sometimes you can, but usually you're on like a 10-year waiting period for roads. So, yeah, we'll keep doing our due diligence and looking for grants and trying to get those projects funded by other sources, so. But that's what's in the budget.
Mark, I want to thank you for taking the time to go through the budget and get it in a format that you can present it to us and we can understand it. Hopefully the public can understand it, and it's something that involves all of us. We appreciate all the time and effort. You and Lindsay's been very involved in it, Curtis, and all the directors have been very involved, and appreciate all of your efforts very much.
All right, thank you.
What I'd like to do is, Councilmember Vance has asked that we go into closed session, and we've got about 15 minutes. We'll try to keep that closed session as brief as we can. But we have school, young people coming to visit us, and so we want to be on time when we try to start at 7 o'clock. So what we'll do is we'll excuse the crowd, and except for Paul and Curtis, and we'll try to get back in.
I'll make a motion, we go into a closed session.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Brett. Motion by Brett and seconded by Wes. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.